Good evening and welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. My name is Garen, for those who don't know me, and tonight we're going to be discussing cults. And the reason we're going to discuss cults is we had an actual request from someone who's had a little bit of experience and has some questions regarding cults. So, what is a cult? Well, first and foremost, we have to understand that the word has been changed basically ever since about the 60s, okay? The word cult simply means to worship. That's it. It's one of these words again that has a whole heap of other meanings piled on it. Now, especially in example with the Manson cult in the 60s, culminating in 69 with the Hollywood murders. Um, Cults began to get a really bad name. And there's a lot of reason for that, to be honest with you. It's perfectly true. And another point we need to be clear on is that all religions are cults. And if we have a modern day definition of cult, it is simply that a group of people holding on to one belief to the exclusion of all others, and that really sums up cult. There is no good or bad in it. The good or bad, of course, comes out of the people. Now, why do people get involved in cults that are led by psychotic individuals? Well, you can be psychotic and also be intelligent enough to understand group psychology and the psychology of human beings, okay? Most human beings, unfortunately, living in a state of the small self, of the ego, are running around looking for something to feel a part of because they feel separate inside. And especially if you're marginalized anyway, and this can apply to women in many cases more often than men, where you have had issues in your childhood, issues with a lack of fatherly love, or what you perceive as such, or what you've been told as such by a psychologist or some other sort of life coach, okay? And these sort of egoic based identities with experience we've had and identifying with that experience as us and blaming ourselves most often than not, at least in part, for the experience happening. Okay, when someone comes into view that seems to have answers and seems to have the right direction and exudes the right sort of charm and makes you feel in a group, and you come in and there's lots of other people in the same situation and everyone's hugging and loving each other, it can feel very complete. But of course, as with everything else, you're going outside of yourself in an attempt to fill a void. And it really comes down to personal power. Your being knows why it's here. Never be in doubt of that. What you are knows exactly what purpose it came here to fulfill. All as you need to do as the egoic identity that you think you are is to sit back and relax and let life start to flow through you naturally. Start to create consciously. You don't need a place to go to feel belonged. And this is the main underlying driving force. And it plays right into the psychology of what's known as in-group mentality, okay? And that in-group mentality, Alan Watts referred to it as, being in the know. You're on the inside. You've got some special information and only your group has it. And of course, it builds up the ego. You feel you have a new identity. The ego is taking on a new identity as a member of this religion. And it doesn't matter what word you use, okay? Religion, cult, fairy godmother knitting group on Friday nights. It doesn't matter what sort of group you're involved in. Now, we have to be clear. There's nothing wrong with getting involved in these groups. Now, you may want to avoid one that happens to believe that you all have to kill yourselves in order to be reborn, to be taken up on the spaceship to the new planet. You may want to think twice. But there are a lot of so-called cults out there, including one called the Baha'i Faith. And you would say, well, that's not a cult. It's considered a cult by many other faiths, especially Christian faiths. And you'll notice that one religion will call any other religion a cult, or a branch of even their own religion a cult, but they're not. Really, the only guide you need to use is any place that you are going, whether it be a cult or a group of any sort, or a religion or a spiritual retreat. If there is one person saying that they are more special than the rest and that they're the only ones who possess the way, you should ask for a refund and run like hell. You know, if you pay attention and watch enough of my videos, you'll notice one thing. I never say, listen to what I have to say and don't judge for yourself. I have the way. I never say that. I say that there are a limitless number of paths back home. They all lead back home. You can't help but get back home. That's never in doubt. The only things in doubt for yourself is which way you want to choose to do it. You want to take the hard road, you want to take the easy road. Personally, I like to mix them up a little bit. A little bit of the hard road sometime makes you much more grateful when things are easy. And that's a beautiful place to be in. When it comes to cults, a lot of it has to do with social support. You know, we live in a day and age where we have this incredible ability to connect with each other. And it is being used in dysfunctional and degenerate and, well, that really covers it all. Ways that aren't healthy. You know, hours upon hours upon hours of meaningless conversations about meaningless things. And we have especially teen suicide at an all-time high, especially among those who stay glued to the internet. You know, a lot of these chat room get-togethers could rightly be called cults in their own right, as far as our perception of what's happening. And this is one thing with the ego, and nobody who possesses an ego, and i.e. all of us, can fall victim to this. And you have to come to a certain level of awareness before you stop falling victim to it. That is the ego in its false identification is very easily subsumed to the group consciousness of whatever it's absorbed in. And I've watched my wife Kelly, and again, I love my wife so much, but she's a great example. Man, sometimes is she a great example. She's laughing over there on the couch. She's trying not to laugh out loud so the mic doesn't pick her up. Come on, honey. You can do it. What was I saying? I got lost in that already.
I'm a great example.
No, Kelly is a great example of, you know, somebody who has had an issue being a member of the Christian cult, her particular brand of the Christian cult. And then upon leaving the cult, even her own family members who are still in the cult, they totally shun her. After 3 years, despite her attempts, there's been like zero contact. And you know, this afternoon she was quite upset again by it. And she says, well, you know, I just don't understand why. And of course, the reason is ego. You know, they have her family members so wrapped up in the in what they're preaching, which they claim to be a message of love. Okay, which apparently involves not speaking to your child anymore and making sure that her children don't have anything to do with her either. and yet you let the pedophile ex-husband come to your home to have dinner. Why? Because he's still in the club. This is how cults behave. This is the mentality that exists behind that. And when you're on the inside, you know, egoically, you think you've got it made. You're the in-group. You're privy to the sacred knowledge. You're going to get the ride on the spaceship, or you're going to get the self-empowerment, or whatever the case may be. But 99% of the time, what you're doing is you're handing your power over to somebody else. Should never, ever, ever do that. Ever. I understand the egoic craving for a social support system, and the internet is not it. It can be it. It can be used properly, but you have to be on guard. You know, Kelly will literally fall asleep at the wheel if she pays too much attention to the Facebook page. I'll watch her, and she'll start with one thing, and then it's flick to the next, almost like channel surfing after a while. And I'll have to almost like clap my hands and, hun, pull yourself back out of there. Shut it off. Leave it alone for a little while. The ego is very good and it does so very easily, subsumes itself into that group mentality. So the only thing you really have to be on guard for is to ask yourself a couple of very realistic questions when it comes to any sort of a group, religion or professed cult or otherwise. One, does it hold true to what you know to be true? That you are all equal beings? Are you asked to give everything to some leader and be subservient to him or to her? That's another big warning sign. And of course, it all must start with yourself. You must ask yourself, why is it that I keep feeling I need to try to go outside of myself to feel fulfilled, to be whole? What happens is we end up in dysfunctional relationships. Why? Because we take that codependency, that feeling that we cannot be whole ourselves, and we take that out there, and there are people who run these cults and these groups who recognize and will prey on that. And if you've been brought up in a heavily religious background, as I have, my wife, and many other people, it can be even worse because you also have this long heritage from the time you were young and not even cognizantly aware of the programming of that belief system pounded into you, and it hangs back in your subconscious. And for a while, you'll feel this state of fear every time you step outside of that. There'll be this little background fear that, what if your great grandfather was right? Or what if, you know, so-and-so's interpretation of the book of Revelation was correct? Whatever the case may be. You must be on guard, as with everything else. You must stay aware of your thoughts. You must reprogram that mind. You see, all the thoughts you have today, all the thoughts you feel about needing to belong, about not enoughness, about needing some sort of support system underneath you, those are all feelings that have been programmed into you, and they are all lies. You have to deprogram yourself. And that deprogramming will take a little bit of time. And it happens on two levels. It happens at a conscious level and it happens at an unconscious level, and also into the spiritual level, okay? You need to put your intent out there that you want to rise above the need for these sort of things. Now, that doesn't preclude going out and participating in groups. What it does preclude is you using the group as an attempt to fulfill some part of yourself that you think is missing. At that moment, you've handed them your power. And when that group decides to move off in a direction that you wouldn't normally do, you will go with them. Why? Because you don't want to lose that position now. And this becomes the big overwhelming issue with these sort of cults, okay? Once you're in, excuse me, and it's a misconception to think that it's only damaged and harmed people that get into cults. Very intelligent people can be subsumed into cults. Just look at Scientology. It's a prime example of that. An absolute whack job set of rules and procedures and policies, and never mind the other more nefarious things that go on behind closed doors. And people will buy into it. Why? To feel part of something larger. And they never understand that they already are. This is why this little course is so important, and I'm going to keep nailing it in people's heads. The other thing that a cult or one of these groups can do is it's an instant community. You know, you move into a new town and you don't know anybody and you're looking for work or you need a little help or whatever the case may be. You're a single parent or a young couple just starting up. What do? You go join a church. Why? Because it's an instant support community. You instantly got a couple hundred people at minimum there who now got your back in some way or another. And of course, that used to be the truth, but more and more, it's the churches in desperation looking for money. And most times those young couples coming in who don't have a lot aren't getting the help from the church they used to. But there's still that community. Now, we can ask ourselves, what is the dysfunctional end of it? The need to go outside of society, the outside of your own area to find community? Or the lack of community created right in and around where you live? There's always that choice too. Start your own cult. Start your own group. Just don't put yourself on a pedestal. Remember that truth, when it comes to earth, there really is no truth. The words we speak are only signposts. We're looking and pointing in the direction of. We're speaking our theories. We're marveling at the magnificence of the universe. Always, always, always pay attention to what you're feeling inside. No matter what sort of group, religion, or cult you choose to become a member of, and again, not all of them are bad. Pay attention to that intuitive place in the core of your being, right in the center of your gut. And if things aren't ringing true for you, get out and take your money with you. And whoever else will go with you as well. I hope this has been helpful. As always, much love and namaste to you all. Really looking forward to doing Sunday's video on dreams and nightmares and archetypes. And as always, we'll talk to you again. Good night.